Well, greetings, friends, in the Liverpool South Circuit. It's really good to be worshipping with you together today. I'm sorry we can't be together in person, but it's good to connect all the same. My name's Tim Baker. I'm the Churches and Volunteers Manager at All We Can. And you catch me today on this Harvest Festival outside on my bicycle. And I think you might be beginning to wonder why I'm doing that. Well, I'm doing that because this year, at All We Can, change begins with a bicycle. We're telling some fantastic stories from work around the world where we're seeing change, particularly in Uganda, happen where a bicycle becomes available to a poor community. And as people in those poor communities have access to a bike, so too they have access to a whole world of change and investing in their own future. And so that's what we invite you to be a part of today at your Harvest Festival. We're going to unpack a little bit more about the reading from John 6 and Jesus's kind of story of change when Jesus talks about and then blesses people by turning that tiny little gift of those loaves and fishes into something that feeds a whole multitude. We're going to reflect a little bit on what that might mean for us, that story of change. And we're going to reflect too on how we can be part of the change for people living in some of the world's poorest communities. So let's go and explore that story together.
That story from the Gospels takes us into a place of need, much like the communities we are working with in Uganda, a little place called Butagaya, which I visited just before lockdown and back at the end of 2019 when we hadn't really heard of coronavirus. Went and visited this amazing community, a place of much need, a place of much poverty. So you're already living in a really poor area, in a really poor part of the world, but also just the sheer distances that divide people from the basic facilities and amenities that they need really mean that they have this kind of extra added complication to their desire to see their potential fulfilled. And so it's one of the things that really struck me, people travelling 5, 10, 15, 20 kilometres sometimes to access school or healthcare, or even just somewhere where they can buy and sell some food. So this story also takes us to a place of need, doesn't it? Because as we gather with Jesus, and Jesus is on the mountain and he's preaching, and the numbers of people just start to gather around him, suddenly there are 5,000, and bizarrely the way the gospel seems to count it is that there's 5,000 men. Who knows how many that really means in total, possibly as many as 20,000 if you add women and children. And this huge crowd is going to be hungry. It's not a wealthy crowd. It's not a crowd full of bankers or people who've all eaten a good hot meal before they've come out. It's a crowd of people in need. A crowd of people probably short of a few quid, and a crowd of people who become hungry. And one of the things that really attracted me to this passage as our focus for our Harvest Festival today is Philip's reaction. Because perhaps we can all feel an affinity with Philip. Philip, the man with the spreadsheet. Philip, the man with the clipboard. Philip, the calculator, who says 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get even a little. He's immediately taken to the place of money, and how much money do we need to raise in order to solve this problem? In many ways that is much of the history of international development, much of the history of the sector I work in, and the part of the work that All We Can is part of, has been about saying how much money do we need to raise in order to solve this problem. And it's not a wholly negative attitude, it's not an attitude we should dismiss out of hand, because that money that's been raised has made a dramatic difference and has helped to tackle poverty. And perhaps if Philip had got access to 6 months' wages, he could have just fed the people and got on with his life. But the danger in that problem is that it presents us, it presents Philip the disciple, or me the white Western guy, as the solution to the problem. It says, I need to find 6 months' worth of wages in order to solve your problem, the fact that there isn't enough food to eat. Whereas Jesus says, what have they got already? Doesn't he? He sends them out to find out who amongst them has already got a solution to the problem. And the little boy presents his 5 loaves and 2 fish. He comes to the master and holds up his little gift and offers it over. Something very ordinary, just an ordinary packed lunch, a few bits of bread, a few bits of fish, given into the hands of the master. And in the hands of the master, those little ordinary gifts become extraordinary. Thus that little moment of a packed lunch transfer moves those bread and fish from one little act, one little packed lunch, into something that can feed a whole crowd by Jesus' miracle. And that's something of what we're trying to do at All We Can. Rather than thinking about how can we fix the problem, actually ask the question, what's already going on in some of the world's poorest communities? Who's already got a good idea about how we could fix this problem? And how can we get alongside that? How can we help to scale that up? Which is essentially all that Jesus does here, isn't it? He scales up the boy's generous offering. And who's to say, many scholars interpret this passage as the miracle that happens in John 6 is a miracle of generosity. Because perhaps the little boy's act of just saying, well, I'm happy to share my packed lunch, spars the other people who do have a packed lunch within the crowd to start sharing. And suddenly there might just be enough. And so we have these kind of 2 themes emerging for us. One in which we reckon that we need to stop calculating and just allow the local solution, allow the change to happen. Allow the miracle of people working together to solve the problem. Maybe that's been a little story you've got from lockdown. Maybe you've had an experience of that. We've struggled, haven't we, to come up with big solutions. The Methodist Church as an institution, we've struggled to come up with the solution to coronavirus. The UK government, we've struggled to come up with the solution to coronavirus as a whole society. But I don't know about you, but I've got lots of stories of little local solutions to problems that have emerged as local people have made contact, as local little ideas for how we might do a socially distanced tea party on the street out here might just work, or local solutions for how we could do worship in a meaningful way and even extend it beyond the people who normally come to our church. We've found little local things that need nurturing and scaling up, even as the big solutions, the 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread type solutions, don't quite work. That's the first of our themes and the first of our lessons for today, the first of our challenges. Where do we sometimes wait for the big solution to come along? Where do we look at a global problem like world poverty and say, oh, that's not about me, that's about somebody wealthier and cleverer and more powerful than I am? Maybe the little boy just offers us an alternative to that when he says, there's something I could do. That's the first one. And the second one is even simpler, really. It's this simple invitation to recognise that what we have might seem ordinary, but if we're willing to put it in the hands of the Master, it becomes extraordinary. Something miraculous happens because of a moment of generosity, because of a moment of offering what is ordinary and therefore making it extraordinary. And that's what I hope for you. That's what I hope the Harvest Festival message this year will be for you. Is what's the ordinary something that you've got that you could just hand over to the Master? In Uganda, for All We Can, the ordinary thing is the bicycle. That simple luxury item. I know that you've seen mine and it's much underused and it spends far too much time in the shed. And I take it for granted. It's ordinary. But in the hands of the amazing people we're working with in Uganda, in the hands of some of the world's poorest people, as they see the opportunity that a bicycle presents, it becomes not a tool of transportation, but a tool of transformation. And something ordinary becomes extraordinary. Well, today, something as ordinary as just £6 a month could help us do something extraordinary.
Our biggest challenge is we take care of my elderly mother and 7 grandchildren. It costs a lot and our income is very small.
I really want to go to school, but it's a long way and I have a lot of chores to do first.
Life has been very hard because I'm disabled. I'm struggling to support my family.
It's not what I want to do, but I have to make bricks to help my family.
For families like these, change begins with a bike. Change begins with your regular support. For Moses' son Ariel, having a bike means freedom.
Now I can get to school and not make bricks all the time.
For Moses, it means now he can earn some money.
My bicycle repair business will grow and I'll be able to feed my family.
For Florence and David's extended family, it means an additional income.
The bike makes it easier for our grandson Andrew to sell his fish at market and get to school.
And for Nawalat, it means the future she's always dreamed of.
I use my bike to get to school so I can be a nurse one day.
Change begins with a bike. Begin this journey as a regular giver. See the cycle of poverty broken for £6 a month.
You've heard how change can begin with a bike. Well, today, change can begin with you. So let's just close with those 2 verses from the beginning of Romans 12, and I'm reading here from the Message translation because I think this just helps to take our ordinary into extraordinary theme a little bit further. So here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, walking around kind of life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for God. What's in your hands? What are your simple offerings? What are we going to place in the hands of the Master this harvest time? God bless you, and I'll see you again soon.